It's recording. Yeah, let me do my thing. So listen. Oh, I did it like this. Okay, we'll just put it there. Okay. So we're doing a tour of Sefer Hamada. And today's a siyum because I finished Sefer Hamada with my chavros in the morning. So now I have the right to talk about whatever I want. So I learned the whole thing.
What shot you said to the Rambam? I haven't followed since.
Wait, I'm saying no. What you want to have general questions? We can make general questions and answers in 5 minutes soon. But I have to first do something serious because otherwise, like the malachim say that I'm making sinners. You know, like there's a shear, it's a medrash whatever, and you come and handles down, like has to be chal. There's medrash has to be chal.
I have to go through your shirim on the.
Okay, so anyways, yeah. So, but it's a good series, relatively. It's relatively saying things that are basic and clear. So, this is our but we were discussing. In order to really learn something, you have to learn every day. Anyone that comes once a week only, it's only going to be like this. So there's 1 year that comes every day, and we learn Sefer Hamada, or I go to him.
Well, you already finished.
But no, I'm just saying that if I've just finished today. Today I learned Hilchos. No, in my private thing, today I finished Hilchos Tshuva, Perek. I'm sure you did. Anyways, very good. So, but this is a overview here, and it's not really discussing the content, but like about the content, which is basically 2 questions that we're asking in each series. I said that we're going to do 5 on each 5 groups of Sefer Hamada. So we did the Seder Torah and Des, and now we're doing up to Talmud Torah, and we have to do Avodah Zarah and Shiva, which are each of these are very. Last week, there's a lot more to talk about Hilchos Des, but I have to keep to my structure. So we're being al pi halacha, al pi structure. We're going now. So we're keeping to it, and we're going to talk about Hilchos Talmud Tora today. And what we want to talk about is 2 things. One is, we discussed that there's the Sefer Hamada. The Sefer Hamada has its headline as the basic thing. How's it say you have in this paper, the headline? The Iker Das Moshe Rabbeinu, the basic things that you also need to know first. These are 2 contradictory things, as we discussed. But anyways, they're connected. And now, as we discussed, Sefer Hamada is very big, much bigger than you would expect it to be for the real Iker Das or foundations, which are literally Hilchos Torah, maybe also Hilchos Tshuva, but not more than that. So that's one question. And the opposite question is why it doesn't include even more things. Because once you're opening it up to more things, then where does it stop?
What would you include?
You understand what I'm saying?
What would you include?
You understand my question? I'll give you examples. Not Hilchos Torah, Hilchos Des. We gave examples that we read the Rambam that says explicitly why there's some things that are there and some things that aren't. In the Yiddish shir that we read it. I don't remember if we did it here. But anyways, meaning to say, for example, in Hilchos Talmud Tora is a little different one. I'm going to show you what he says, why it's important and which parts also. But for example, I'll give you a good example. Something that should belong in Hilchos Talmud Tora is Kibud Avayim, or Zukin Mamre, which are in Sefer Shoftim, and could have been in Hilchos Talmud Tora in some way. And it's a question why certain parts, in other words, I'll get to the detail, but this is an example. Okay? What?
You mentioned that
Yeah, 1 second. So these are the 2. I'm going to go on the order and answer these 2 questions, or talk about these 2 things, which is one, how certain things. So Hilchos Talmud Tora, this is what we're learning, is a very important thing because it doesn't seem most Yidden would not tell you. I mean, of course, every Litvak would tell you the Talmud Tora is from the Seder Torah, but I'm not sure what he means by that or why. But I mean, the Ram also would tell you it, and Chazal would tell you it, but it has to be explained. So. But Pashta is in Shulchan Aruch, Talmud Torah is near the day. It's one other random halacha among a bunch of random halachas that have nowhere to go. And by the Rambam, it's the 3rd most important thing, or not literally, I don't know, but it's one of the most important things. It's in the 1st book. So that's the question number 1, and there's an explicit answer to this. I don't have to make anything up. He writes about this. And then we have to discuss what is included in it and where it stops being important. Okay, so let's see how much of this we can talk about. So for the first question, so we have, let's see if I have it here. Yeah, I have it here in this first page. It says like this. So in Perek Lamed Vov, where the Rambam is going through the meta-mitzvahs, and he goes through his klolim. The first klal. Okay, now this is interesting, right? Because the first klal is Yidayas Yisoidiyas, basic truths. And he says that this is Hilchos Torah. In other words, the simple meaning, what it means here is Hilchos Torah. And it says, read through each of the truths that's in Hilchos Torah. You'll see that it's true, and I made a little number in some of the versions, and that it's demonstratively so, right? So that's Hilchos Torah, and that's obvious. Okay, and then the Rambam himself understood that there's a bunch of more things that he wants to include in this category. Now this is something that Rambam likes doing because there's a whole reasoning, the whole logic of Tamei mitzvahs is that we find some basic categories and then we explain everything else in terms of this. and always the more basic things don't need explanation or are explainers, and the less basic things are explained by them. So it's always good to find more things that we could connect to these most basic things. So it goes like this. And then the second thing, this is literally the second thing he says, and it's obvious, because Hilchos Dayas doesn't belong to this category. Hilchos Dayas is the third category. We discussed that last week. But in the category of basic things, like of course the basic truths that the Torah is based on, or that the Torah's goal is to achieve, are Hilchos Torah, okay. And then he says, V'chein, Kol ma shebo min hazirus v'azhora lilmoid u'lelamed mevorati eles. So this is him connecting this to Yesod HaTorah. Hilchos Talmud Tora to Yesod HaTorah. Since everything that has to do with the mitzvah and zirus, like there's all kinds of like madrashim and lashonos that you should learn and how important it is, it's obvious. Mevir doesn't mean is explained. Mevir in the Rambam's and Maimonides always means is obvious or is clear. It doesn't need a beer. It's not like we use the word beer. It's an Arabic term that gets translated like this. But that's what it means. It's obvious what the te'elis is. Why? Im lo yasham chachma, if there would not be knowledge, lo yasham maaseh toiv, lo ydas amiti. This is very important. Both of all the two things that he says, right? So the first like level of what he says is obvious, right? The Talmud Nevel de Maaseh. So Talmud Torah, this is like interesting reason for Talmud Torah being like Yesod HaTorah. Talmud Torah is Yesod HaTorah because it's logically prior, or like not literally logically, but in nature or in education, prior to everything else, because if you don't know what to do, you can't do it, okay? But he says more than that. Okay, so Maaseh Tov, okay, we can understand. So in other words, there has to be a mitzvah, and it sort of makes sense, because this is like a meta-mitzvah, right? Talmud Torah is really sort of a meta-mitzvah. Just like Emunah is sort of a meta-mitzvah, because like, we need to know that there's a God in order that everything else should work. We also need to learn.
That's half mitzvah.
No. Well, in some sense you could say it actually when it's mamish mevel de'amasa, but it's also a meta mitzvah in the sense of like it's really a little weird for like, it's actually even weird. Like we remembered of Chizdoi's problem with like Amunah being a mitzvah, which is like who's giving you the mitzvah. We could sort of say an analogous question for Hilchos Talmud Tora, because we don't know about any mitzvah without learning it or someone teaching it to us. That's why the lamed is important. Is very basic. And Hilchos Talmud Tora people are confused about this also. And like, why the lamed? What if I learn it myself? Well, again, because this is trying to answer the meta question of how do I get, so very nice, there is mitzvahs, like in Olam, I don't know, somewhere in some abstract word, universe, but how do I know about any of it? And who makes me know about it? Like, what's the chayv of knowing about it and say, right, there's a mitzvah, but I never heard of it, so what's the problem? So, and therefore, in order for any mitzvahs to exist, and really in other words, in order for the good, or in order for both good actions and correct opinions, correct knowledge to exist in any society, there needs to be a mitzvah of an education, like the clout, the meta idea of education being important needs to exist before that. That's why it's a basic thing that needs to be known first. Like sort of the first thing we tell you, listen, it's a mitzvah to learn. Now that's a mitzvah to learn, now you'll know everything. Because you learn what do you have to learn? Okay, you learn these mitzvahs. So now you'll know all the mitzvahs. So in that sense, it's very important, it's very obvious that it's a mitzvah to learn, and this is like a very basic thing where people get confused sometimes about the value of education in the sense of learning, and like if it's even if we say if like the way it says here, like it's subservient to the action, like we learn in order to know what to do or in order to know what to believe even, and they say okay, so the main thing is to know what to believe. But the problem is that sadly, at least assuming that humans don't like innately know everything somehow by magic, in order to know what to believe or what to do, you have to know first. So even without what?
The foundation.
Yeah, even without going to like Socrates and like saying knowing is all the good, or and without knowing precisely you can't do anything. Even without getting that far, you need to value education. If you value any kind of human good, you need to value education, since humans by default don't know anything and need to be either taught or like but they need to be taught and they need to learn. So you need to have Talmud Torah as a basic value, it's one of the basic things of it. It's a very important thing, and like you see.
So it's also an economy.
Yeah, we see societies where theoretically value very much values and morals and the good, but if you don't value education, then you're not going to have anything like that either, just because in order to do good, and well, also because you say like good is more complicated than just like I wake up and have feelings and getting manipulated by whoever wants to manipulate you, but that's really second order. But just the basic, you're going to have to know there will not be any true, and of course, and so that's relative to Maaseh Tov mostly, right? But now, more than that, it says, V'lo das amiti. You will not have any true knowledge. How does it say here? You will not have any true knowledge without learning. And that's an even more serious thing, right? Because since we assume that the tachlis of the Torah is not only to have good maaseh, it's also, or maybe primarily, or finally, or maybe both are valuable, however exactly we organize those things, it's also important to have not only like useful truths, but also the real truths, demonstrative truths. And those are things that are not impossible to get without learning, right? So you could say, maybe in some sense, just the good actions, okay, sometimes maybe you just like somehow are used to it, or somehow actually you got educated into it somehow, but whatever. But let's say we could sort of, it's not so specifically about learning, like learning in the learning sense, in Ian. But if you want to have true knowledge,
you forget how to teach it for a few generations. People still
that's true. Yeah. But kal v'chomer, but even more than that, if you want to have true knowledge, you're not going to have it's not impossible. Like it's possible to have good actions by some sort of habit without like saying I'm a lamdan, but you definitely can't have true knowledge without being some kind of a lamdan.
Find true knowledge?
No. Yeah, but no, it's in the prior analytics. His definition is based on the prior analytics. And that's the short answer. what he calls true knowledge. And it's very, very demanding criteria. Maybe nobody ever has it, but point is, yeah, that's not, I could, but I have to say shit first. I wanted to see just what it says here. But this is important. Therefore, it turns out the Talmud Torah, for the Rambam, already when he says the Talmud Torah is basic in this like meta sense of there being nothing happening without it, is basically important also because of the importance of having. I'm sorry, which perek is it? Lamed Vav, yeah. I have the same exact thing here.
I know, you're trying to talk to me about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to see what it says. Yeah, das amiti. I copied the same language from here. I'm silly. I want to see, so I have to look into other people. It's fine. Being silly. So in other words, it turns out Talmud Torah is really studying philosophy or studying truth. Not only studying, because most of the Talmud Torah is not actually that. This turns into something important. I want to talk about this in a little bit. But right, because if you see Talmud Torah just learning what to do, then you're never going to get to das amiti. Unless in the sense you say correct opinion, but correct opinion is different from true knowledge. I'm not sure, that's why I have to check if he says here it means true knowledge or correct opinion, which are the two different things. But I know that in Hilchos Talmud Tora, I know that he also talks about true knowledge as part of the value of Talmud Tora, as part of the goal of Talmud Tora. And there on the Choyna it says here, I don't know, that's a problem.
That's not like an opinion.
No, yeah, but you have to know, Ibn Tibban is more accurate usually. And I don't have Arabic. I don't have Arabic in front of me, so yeah.
Schneerberg would like to disagree with you.
Yitzchok. Okay, this is a meta discussion. Anyways, I could tell you what it says in the thing in a second and see if I remember what the word means. If you want to look at Chelik Bez, which perek did we say? Lamed Vav. Alam. Yeah, it says something like yeah, it says I don't know where he got the word amiti. It's not exactly the term that he uses for that. No, see here Rabbi what's his name is a little more accurate. No, actually, yeah, nachon. I don't know what nachon means. He keeps on translating it. No, I'm looking in the source. This is how to.
Correct opinion condition. That's what the Pinna says.
Yeah, it doesn't say the word opinion either, by the way. It says that's not entirely accurate. In any case, it doesn't matter because we don't need this diak to know. Because we don't need this diak to know that this is what he does. He does see Talmud Torah as having that part. So whichever one it says, it's
both true knowledge and.
Yeah, it's obviously both, but that's I would say there's a difference between Mishnah and Talmud. Mikra, Mishnah, and Talmud. Talmud goal and Yisoda Torah, the goal of Talmud is to know truly. Mashank and the goal of Mishnah. So it's talking about both. Whatever exactly, that's why I don't know. But anyways, that turns out to be, that's what I'm saying, that's what it turns out to be more important, at least, because if you look in Hilchos Talmud Tora, you'll see him talking about a bunch of different levels of Talmud Torah. The first of which is just achieving correct actions and opinions. But then there's something called Shlish B'Talmud, which is probably what achieving Keser Torah is about, which is a whole different chapter and has its own halachos, and is really about becoming a true philosopher. And for that, the idea of like the whole different, like just like in Lamdas, like in halacha, the difference between Mishnah and Talmud is, like Rambam says, is knowing the causes of things, right? If you know the halacha, but you know the why of the halacha, that's Talmud. And in the same way, there's Hilchos Talmud Tora, right, or part of this, which is Hilchos of certain mitzvahs. You could formalize it that way. And there's knowing the that of it, and there's knowing the why of it, and the why of it is Talmud, and that's Talmud Torah. Of course, there's also a mitzvah to have Mishnah, so both of them are the mitzvah. But the real goal is that. But that's
Like even within this foundational thing, there's
So Rambam
foundation.
said you have to do it intentionally, like when I'm learning Gemara, I gotta get that true knowledge, or it's just like
no, Gemara is not true knowledge. Only Hilchos Talmud Tora is true knowledge. Because Gemara only goes back to like some basic laws or Mefarsamas or things like that, which is very important, but it's important for Yeshiva Olam, and it's actually not clear how important it is to know the causes of the halachos. So we see that Rambam made a book called Mishnah Torah, where he's like not about the causes of them. Not clear. Okay. And then after do one more thing. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll see inside what it says in Hilchos Talmud Tora about this. But that's what it says here. But in any case, it's obvious that both of these things need teaching for them to work. So therefore, there's a mitzvah to teach, both to be a teacher and to be a student. And then there's another thing, and this is the second part of Hilchos Talmud Tora, like Hilchos Talmud Tora, as we see here, and also as you see if you read it, it sort of separates into two main areas. It says in Hilchos Talmud Tora has two mitzvahs. So respect of two things, by the way, two different things, like of your teacher and of some people that know Torah, which have different halachos. And that is, but here he's talking about the general one, he's not talking about respect your teacher. And he says that's obvious. We understand the reason. So again, this is clearly a useful thing. There's also, you have to read it clearly. It says there's a mitzvah to have Kvod Chachamim. Kvod Chacham is a big mitzvah. That's why it's again a basic thing. Why is it a basic? It's basic not because like Chachamim, I don't know, something, not as an end for itself, but because it's basic contingent on the previous thing. Because people only become good, right? Deis v'masim, right? We only got good opinions and good actions by learning them, and we only learn them from other people. Well, unless you have a way of learning it all by yourself, but most people at least don't have that way. Then, now people have a problem that they only learn from people that they respect. That's like a weakness of people, because it shouldn't be that way, because it should be Kabbalah Emes Misham. But the reality isn't this way. At least people don't actually work that way. They only learn from people they respect. And it's also sort of rational, right? Because you're not going to like work too hard and waste your time with some dumb guy, right? So that's why the Kabbalah Emes Misham is good only after you know that something is true. But it's not like a way of life, really.
It's not bad for the first thing. It's not a bad reason for Ma'aseh Tov. The guy that doesn't do Ma'aseh Tov, maybe you could say that maybe his knowledge doesn't get to Ma'aseh Tov. So that's why you don't know.
Which person?
For the first thing that he says
that we have to learn in order to know things. But how are you going to learn it from? You're going to learn it from someone.
I'm saying, but that might be actually a good time that you maybe should learn the things that teach you good actions from someone who doesn't have it in Torah.
Yeah, but from someone you don't respect. He doesn't say, it's a different thing that the Rebbe has to be a Zemel HaMelech Shem Tzvakes.
Is this a chiv in the learner or on the learning?
No, the learning. The Kvod Chachmei Torah, there's a chiv of the Talmud Chacham to act in certain ways also, but he's talking, yeah, it sort of corresponds to that, but it's also, there's also some halachos on the teacher in Hilchos Talmud Tora, but I don't know if it's, most of them are in Hilchos Deis, and Anna actually also in Hilchos Torah and Kiddush Hashem. It also talks about that, right? Rabbi Yechanan, the thing with Kiddush Hashem, where he can't walk without tefillin. It's burning of Kiddush Hashem. But in general, he's talking about here about the mitzvah of respecting Chachmei Torah, and the mitzvah of respecting Chachmei Torah is in order that you should be able to learn Torah. So it's not for the purpose of the Talmud Chacham, and it's not like for some moral reason, which is like, at least the Rambam and Tamei Mitzvahs doesn't like things that end in morality. Like we should respect someone that's smart because he deserves respect.
This is tautology.
Well, there's not many people that like things that end like this. The Rambam doesn't like things that end like this. The Rambam always likes things that end with you should respect people worthy of respect. Of course, they're worthy of respect. But they're worthy of respect because by respecting them, you will learn from that. And by learning from them, you will become a better person. And you cannot become a better person without learning from someone. And you can't learn from someone without respecting him. So there's always like these long chains. Wait. This belongs to the question and answers. There's always these long chains. There's always these long chains which end up with perfection of this individual human being. That's how all the meta-mitzvahs work. We discussed this a little bit last week, and the people were very upset at me in Bar Park that it says this, but that's what the Rambam says. And also here, you were not here last week.
No, yeah.
Nobody was here. The point is, many people want it. I saw this yesterday. This morning, I read Rabbi Moshe Mendelssohn wrote a letter to Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and to great Chnanim, and they had a discussion about the Rambam. Who?
Which topic did it come out of? The Shvar thing?
No, something else.
Different topic?
No, they had correspondence.
No, I know there's one famous one about the dead burying people. Right?
Yeah, no, but there's more. I think there's more. I don't know. I didn't read the whole letter. I just read this part. But Salnor was quoting it in some book of his, and I have to look up the original. But Otzra Chachma beGrov Gadlisam don't stack these books. You have to find them somewhere else in Google, and it's more work. Anyways, but Rav Moshe Dessor wrote to Rabbi Yaakov Emden. But this is interesting because it has to do with this Makida philosophy. He wrote to Rabbi Yaakov Emden. He's very moroigis on the Rambam that says that goyim that do mitzvahs without kavanah or not chesidim masalim. Of course, we know that Rambam never wrote it, but they thought that Rambam wrote that. So he said he's right to Rabbi Yaakov Emden. I remember that we discussed this once, and you told me that you have a makar for the Rambam, and you also think, he says the Kesef Mishnah writes on the side, Divrei Rabbeinu Svara Pshita, and he says like, what? The Svara Pshita is the opposite, and this is Rabbi Moshe's writing. And he said, I remember that you told me that you have a source in the Gemara, so I want to hear what's your defense of the Rambam.
You know the measures. I have the
Wait,
measures.
I don't want to get stuck. I'm going to have to go back. Fine. Now, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Now, what?
No tangents.
No, just something new that I learned, I'm telling you. So Rabbi Moshe Dessau says that he has a theory. He thinks he knows why the Rambam wrote this. He says, because the Rambam holds that the whole Torah is Mefirsam besides Farnach V'Yelich. So therefore, there is no way to know the good without having a Kabbalah with Moshe Rabbeinu. Because you asked, well, it's not fair. How do you expect every God to know the Rabbanon? Like, the whole thing is a drash, and the Rambam says, okay, it says in the Torah, but someone says it doesn't say in the Torah. What are you going to do? Like, it's very weird. So, but then he says, he thinks the Rambam says this because he doesn't believe in the self-evidentness of any human action. The only things that are self-evident are truths. But how to act is never self-evident according to the Rambam. Never rises to the standard of... So you can't know it by yourself. There is no way to know. Like, for example, like when a guy does sigzod, how do you know not to steal? So did he learn this shtickle Rambam in Perek Beis as meaning that there is no way. So therefore, no, it doesn't help. No. So therefore, if you don't... How do you know not to steal?
What if the guy knows this? What if the guy knows truths? Then he does?
No, the truths, of course, don't have this problem. Everyone's mind. Not everyone, but...
So what if a guy knows truths?
No, then he's fine. That's fine.
Then
we're talking about the guy.
Truth results from action. They don't cause action.
No. If he knows truth, if he knows that there's a God, I don't know if that's the Divrei Rambam. But I'm just talking about someone that doesn't steal. Yeah, whatever the Shev Mitzvah Necha. Right?
Curse God out.
Yeah. No, he doesn't. No, that's a truth. I'm saying about a moral thing, right? So he doesn't kill. He doesn't murder. Right? He doesn't murder anyone. Right? So you ask him, why don't you murder anyone? So like, where's it from? So says the Rambam, you can't really not murder anyone for any reason besides for that Moshe Rabbeinu said it. Because there's no other reason.
Right.
There's no other reason that makes sense. Because how do you know not to murder anyone? Oh, it's a minig. Okay.
And if you don't murder because Moshe Rabbeinu said it, then you get El Mahaba?
Okay, the Mahaba part. No, the Mahaba part is because that's just how, the only way it makes sense for the Rambam to say don't steal. It only makes sense in a revelation way or in a tradition way.
And then it's adequate to get you El Mahaba.
No, of course not.
No,
that's
I'm saying according to this, I know.
Then you're asking a different kasha. But it does. That's a different kasha. But it does sort of connect. It does sort of make sense that if you think, because this problem we have, like, what does the guy do if he doesn't have revelation? Like Nebuch, he doesn't have. Okay, very nice. The Nebuch problem we don't solve, but we do solve that it's just impossible. There's no other place to get it from. You could pretend to get it somewhere else. Maybe you got it filtered through some other tradition. It goes back to Hastina. Okay, so then you have to be choykir. What's the din according to that Rambam?
Like you said, what's Hastina?
Yeah, no. If you got it from some book, that ends up okay. Ich weiß nicht. But the idea he's saying is that since the Rambam, and that's how he understood the Rambam. I'm not sure. Nobody knows if that's really what the Rambam meant over there. But if that's the case, then there isn't any other option. It's not like, and then Mendelssohn goes on to say, but this is wrong. And then he's writing to the back of Emden. And this is wrong because everyone who's read my book knows that you could know. good and bad. And he has, it's true, by the way, I didn't read him himself, but I've read the summaries of his philosophy and the encyclopedia and stuff. And one of his big things is after Kant, but he's even more than Kant, because Kant has like some limitations on this and the practical judgment. But Mendelssohn is actually, like Leibniz, is an extreme rationalist, and he thinks that you could know all morality can be derived just from pure reason, and the like Rambam. And like I said, like a lot of other people, but this is like his honest philosophical opinion, and therefore he says the Rambam is wrong. And now I have a kasha on the Rambam, and then the Rebbe Akbender finds that there's a diak and Sanhedrin and it's a shvach diak, so nothing. How did I get to this? But the Rambam doesn't. So the Rambam, unlike Mendelssohn and unlike all Protestant people who sort of have to agree with something like this, doesn't think that it's good to end things in like saying it's just the correct thing or just good. It's just like a final good to be a good person. Final good is to be a perfect person, which ends up in intellectual perfection, or but you can't say, well, why should you respect a tzaddik or respect a smart person? Well, because it's the good thing to respect. That's not an end for him ever. Not in time. The end is always, so therefore you should yourself become a good person. Now, why should you yourself become a good person? That doesn't need a reason. But
why is he that
not a good person, a complete person, which is...
Because one is
no,
what
you
you
should,
are, one is what you are, and one is not what you are, I guess. Is that the reason?
Yeah, something like that.
One is goes to the
It
nature
ends
of
up
the thing
being
or
what
not.
we call egoistic or self-eudaimonic, right? Ethics that are centered on the perfection of a person, not on an obligation to anyone else, and not on all kind of things like that. That is the way...
Universal perfection, only individual perfection?
In Tamei Mitzvahs, it always ends on the individual. We read last week Beferish places that say like this. There's other places that say other things, but there is another place. No, there is other places. There is other places. There is other things like this, but yes, the Rambam says, at least the logic of almost all of his Tamei Mitzvahs end up with things like this. Like we should have a community in order that each individual in that community should be able to become good.
We said Mashiach, is that the extension of that essential philosophy.
For example, that works in the same way. Yeah, all of his things work with this in this way. Everything has to. That's why we have these sometimes very long chains, but they all end up in the perfection of a human being, and therefore you should respect the Rebbe because it helps you, not because it helps the Rebbe,
right?
Or not because it helps God. Or anything
like
like
that. Before now we finished that this reminds me of Nachman Sadik Emes, which the whole point is that enable the perfection of a person, not the perfection. It's like a mirror.
If it's that way, yeah.
The Taka says that way many times.
Yeah, it's a thing that's accepted in all of the people that focus very much. Most of the people, in other words, most of the people that focus very much on the honor or the respect of a teacher, and it's true. They focus on it being the prerequisite to learning from him, or from maybe learning also in like more mystical ways. But to receiving from a teacher, you can't do it without respecting him. Yeah.
Just if you don't respect the person, you won't try to find this reason why he holds it. You just say, "Oh, he made a mistake." Useless. Or
that's another problem. Yeah, but then you maybe sometimes does make a mistake, then we get problems. But kids, yeah.
But it's assumption of innocence.
Yeah. But it's like respect, or what I don't know what it says here. Kvod the kibbut chachmei Torah. Gedolim v'mechabodim. You have to like look up to them. Yeah. That's also because people emulate people that they respect and things like that. But, yeah. Okay, and then he adds something else, which is, this is another thing which is not Hilchos Talmud Tora, or it is, but it's weird. B'chlal mitzvah, this I want to read it, because I'll have to read everything he says here about this. B'chlal this a mitzvah gamken, in other words, part of mitzvahs, Kvod Talmud Chachamim, lesnag v'boishes v'anova, retzoni loymer, aminu p'nei sevatokim. So what's going on here is something very interesting, I think, which is that there's a pasuk p'nei sevatokim, okay? Very nice pasuk. It says in the buses in Israel, right? And if I say there's machlek stanoim in Kedushin, what does it mean? Well, there's two shittas. One shitta says it's a ein zokin al misha kana chachma. V'nei means respect people that study, people that know, people that learn. And there's a different shitta in the Tanam that says no, it means an old person, as it says literally. Now, interestingly, the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs, if I remember, so the Rambam in both in Sefer HaMitzvahs and in his list of mitzvahs, he's quoting it. The list of mitzvahs says, the Rambam in Mikra Halacha paskins like the shit that when Tokum just means what he just said, so there's nothing added to that. In other words, when you ask the Rambam, if the Rambam lists the mitzvahs, the Tarek mitzvahs, what's the mitzvah of Nesev Tokum? In other words, where's the source? In other words, the second thing we just said there's two things in Hilchos Talmud Tora. The first thing is to learn Lilmud al-Lamed, and the second thing is Lechabed Lem Detah. Which pasuk is Lilmud al-Lamed? Okay, Lilmud al-Lamed that says about the bomb or whatever the pasuk is. I don't remember which pasuk he brings. But and the Chabad is Melamed Torah. Which pasuk is it? So it says here, the pasuk is Mipnei Sevetokim. That's what in the
Not
mitzvah.
es l'Rabbos.
No. Mipnei Sevetokim. That's a Gemara and Kedushin. He didn't make it up, this pshat. Mipnei Sevetokim. Mipnei Sevetokim, that's the pasuk for being mechabed lamdei Torah. And that's not the pshat in the pasuk, I think. And it's also not the whole halacha, because the Rambam does paskin the second thing, the second shitta, as some sort of some sort of theory that I don't understand, which is that mitzvahs could have more than one meaning, that have no shaykhs one with the other, and they could both be part of the mitzvah. I'm not sure how this actually works. Maybe if you know, you could tell me. Like this is going to do. This is going to do means don't cut yourself, and it also means don't make 2 minyan. And both of these are halacha. And both of these are maybe the Raisa even. I don't know.
Like some sort of Schrodinger's mitzvah.
What?
Like some sort of Schrodinger's mitzvah, you know?
No, it's both.
Yeah, it's both together.
And then sometimes it becomes a laf shebekloda, sometimes it doesn't.
The
Also another thing.
The Rashman does the same thing when he says that the tefillin could be taitafos, could be
that's about but that's about pshat and sod. The Rambam again the Rambam works with this theory that the halacha at least doesn't care about the pshat and the pasuk. Okay, then there's this difference. So that we'll get to. And the Rambam in Mishnah Torah works with the idea that there's Perish Torah Amakol Messinai, which and he's I think that's what if you look. Let me see in Hilchos Talmud Tora, it says with the halacha that starts about Kvod Talmud Chachamim. So like this, Kol Talmud Chacham mitzvah lahadra shenema pnei sevetokim. That's the pasuk that he brings, and then it ends up in the halacha here. It says Misha Zokim Miflug Af B'She'ena Chacham Mahadri Noisa Shnema Pnei Sevetokim Kol Seva Mashma. So you have to decide, if it's Kol Seva Mashma, then how does it have anything to do with Talmud Chacham? And it's really like a machlokes. There's third shit. There's also in the Gemara, I think.
The Rambam that's what many ways. I thought many times they bring down the wrong pasuk or.
He brings the wrong pasuk because he thinks it's a better source than the Gemara had. But it's not. It's just for fun.
No, but it's not necessarily true. Because sometimes they'll bring the same pasuk twice,
That's what. But the same pasuk twice is also he seriously does this. That's what they're saying. There could be the same pasuk twice in Sefer HaMitzvahs, like in where it says the same pasuk has more than one meaning. So that's the halacha. The halacha somehow works like this. You could have both, but the real, in other words, you ask the Rambam, halacha, the real meaning is, the main meaning at least, the ikr meaning is Talmud Chachamim. It's also, and it's less. You don't have the same halachas of Kvod. If the main meaning would be as an old person, you would have to stand up. You don't really have to stand up. If you mahadir only, there's differences in halacha because of not being the ikr meaning. The ikr meaning is a zakan shekana chachma. There's also a nice thing.
Rambam does hold that not the the imma gotta be carbon, whatever it is, the basic shaman also.
No, I don't think there's such as. No, because it's more common. He has his own theory of how the Hilchos Basa comes out of this based on Tanan, but also he has his own version of trying to make it make more sense. Okay, now Nikita is so that's
other examples besides let's is the one obvious one.
There's 100 of examples. If you read Sefer Mitzvahs, I don't remember now. Not 100. There's a lot. There's more. There is more. Kiddush Hashem is another example. For example, now you could push them all into the same category in some way, but the Rambam has 3 pshatim on Kiddush Hashem, and he passes all of them. That's an example, and it's actually not clear how. And you could push them into the same categories. They're not entirely unrelated, but it's not clear. There's 3 things. Only 2 of them are brought in Mishnah Torah. But anyways, that's just from what I remember from this book. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that there's many or more such examples. I can't do it right now. Okay. Now, I don't finish what I'm saying. Maybe this is what's going on here. Now, and so that's al pi halacha. Al pi halacha, there's mitzvah means Talmud Chacham. Also, sometimes, you should be nice to old people because you know what? They're old people. They've suffered enough. Try to make them suffer a little less. Okay.
Would you say it really terrible if they say with Talmud Chacham? When I wrote Seiba, not Zkeinim.
I don't know. These are things that people that are worried about Pshar and Rash say. I don't know. The Rambam doesn't have these kind of shtiklach Torah ever that I know of. Not beferish. People like to say it, but I like not reading things into people that don't say these kind of theories. No. There's a question. What Seiba means? If Seiba means Pi Halacha, Moshe Rabbeinu when he gave this shir, he said means Kanach Achmed. That's how the Rambam describes the Moshe Rabbeinu teaching, and then there's no two.
Why what's the reason? So say you live whatever they use Tamachim, like whatever Arabic word.
That's how that was the word. That was the word. There was no other word. Seifa means Tamachim. Actually, not true. No, that's actually whatever you want to know. Pshat. Again, this is more about Pshat. I can tell you that it means the elders, but elders doesn't mean the word elders doesn't mean old people. The word elders means something like the Zkeinim Shevet could be young. Sometimes they're young. Usually, maybe they're old, because usually old people have more wisdom. But it's not necessarily so, right? So that's sort of how the logic, the pshat would work. So it's not ugeflek to say, like, and of course, usually Talmud Chacham when he's young is not Talmud Chacham. It's not really going to be so different in many of the cases, but it's the Talmud Chacham that we're mechaber the Chachma, and not the just being old. And that's why it's really a chiddush. Like that's what we call like Zochkan Hashmoy, or some dumb old guy. Yeah. Say, okay, when he was younger, he was even dumber, so he gets respect for that. You know, something like that. I don't know. Why would you stand up for a dumb old guy? That is when he was younger. Imagine how dumb he was. Imagine how dumb he would be without all of his life experience. So, okay.
Is that called experience? Someone remains dumb by not getting the experience.
I don't know what it means. Rabbi Yechon said, I don't know what it means. I don't know like what the reasoning. Like, okay, he had so many problems in life, and therefore some kind of vision. He has some kind of wisdom, right? Or you could say, like I said, he's suffered enough, so at least that's not. I don't know. Okay. Anyways, it's even like a goy, right? That's what it says, even a goy, because same thing. Anyways, but this is interesting. I want to show you what it says in Moreh Nevuchim. Moreh Nevuchim doesn't go like this. Moreh Nevuchim has a rule, the general rule in time and mitzvahs of Moreh Nevuchim, that he doesn't work with the halacha. He generally does. I mean, his default is always to understand things wrong with the halacha, just like every other year's default is. So it's not even like always the case. Sometimes people say, well, here he's going with the halacha. Maybe he just thought that was the pshat, and maybe it is the pshat. But at least, like, why would it? It takes like a whole. You have to like have a lot of time to waste in order to find out the basic pshat and all the psukim with the loika halacha, which is sort of useless. So why would anyone do it? Question on the Rashbam. But anyways, but in Moreh Nevuchim he doesn't have this rule, but some things are obvious, right? Some things are obviously the halacha is not like the pshat, and Chum themselves knew that it wasn't pshat. Or talked about it, not the Parish talked about it. So the Rambam says in one of his like Hakdamas of Torah mitzvahs is that this is going to be reasons of the Chumash, not reasons of the halacha. And there's a logic in this. The secret is that the Rambam believes the Torah mitzvahs are here to explain God, not to explain us. He says it by but he says it in more places, in more than one place. There's more than one thing. I don't remember now. Don't ask me to list everything because it's not prepared. He said, I'll explain. The Torah mitzvahs are framed. The Rambam's framing for Torah mitzvahs is explicitly not why are we weirdos doing all these things. That is not his problem. That's the Rashi's problem in Parshas Chukas. You know, the Satan Messiah. The Rambam's problem is that since there is a God, and there is God in his actions, that's all there is. And God's actions are all rational. Rational in the Rambam sense, not rational in, like, they always all have a reason, all for a purpose. Yeah. And otherwise, that's like dumb and like Perek, there's a whole Perek about this. Otherwise, there'll be either a game or there will be some useless. And obviously, God doesn't do things useless unless you are a Kalam person who believes that. And then you don't need Torah mitzvahs. And that's like the Rambam takes seriously that shit. He very much doesn't hold of it, but he thinks that it's a serious shitta. The shitta zarutzin. But unless you hold like that, then everything is just God's will that's arbitrary. But since we don't hold like that, so we hold that all of God's actions need.
Because the world's not arbitrary. That's what the vision.
Because there's nature, because nature exists, and without nature existing, we wouldn't know that there's a God. So the system that doesn't start with that doesn't work. Anyways, but therefore, all of God's actions are based in wisdom. And wisdom means that you do things with a purpose. So therefore, God has a bunch of actions. Nature has a purpose. Well, of course, to a limit, whatever, however we understand purpose in nature. And the same things, God's words, which are one of his actions. Just another action. The Torah is just another one of God, Maseh Hashem. Dibur Hashem, it's just another man. What it doesn't mean that God spoke. It just means somehow however it's exactly understood.
Like,
therefore,
not the Muslims, right?
what?
Not the Muslims,
Yeah, not an internal word, right? And therefore, it's an action that needs an explanation. And therefore, the Rambam's job in Sefer Mitzvahs, that's why Pirish Tamia Mitzvahs, in a certain sense, just like the Rambam says that Mitzvah Talmud Tora, the originally Mitzvah Talmud Tora, the original, that's also Mitzvah Havas Hashem, by the way. And that's why that's the Zefris Pshat in Havas Hashem. But Mitzvah Havas Hashem is to know God and his actions. Maybe the Havas Hashem.
It's not emotional?
What?
You mentioned this probably in the previous year, but it's not emotional?
Not emotional, no. The Rambam says beferish ve'eina ahava ela b'das she'yadeo. Zeh l'shen Rambam. It's the bunch of words in between, but that's what it says. And
right, that's like a nice emotional romance.
It's very nice to be emotional, but the definition of ahava is not emotion. The definition of ahava is knowledge. Now, a knowledge is the closest you can get to anything. So, no mitzvah to have emotions according to the Rambam. The Rambam is not a big emotional believer like most ancient and pre-modern philosophers. Doesn't really hold of emotions too much. Now, Bekitze, unlike the Hasidim and people like that. But
Very repressed back then.
what?
Very repressed back then.
Very
Repressed.
no. Now you're framing it in this way. They were very emotional. They just didn't see it as the point, as the definition, as the end. Doesn't mean that they were repressed. You see, maybe they were not repressed. Some people are repressed. No. Wait, we're getting off topic. The point is, like this: the mitzvah of a Havas Hashem, the mitzvah of knowing God. In other words, what's the perfection of a human being is to know God and His actions. Now, there's like two categories of actions. There's nature and there's law or Torah, and the Torah, of course, is based on nature also. So, in some sense, it's the same thing. But, in other words, the nature of how human society works and works the best, which is what the Torah is. And that's why the Rambam says the Torah is not natural, but it's perfection of nature. That's his language. In other words, perfection of human nature, of social human nature, and of individual human nature. And therefore, understanding the Torah is a mitzvah. Just not a mitzvah. This is mitzvah Talmud Torah. Not the Mevel Damasa, more in the understanding God aspect. Right? You have to understand God's actions, just like you want to understand why the sun is in a certain way. You want to understand why mitzvahs are in a certain way. Okay. Now this is the Rambam's reading understanding of Talmud mitzvahs. It has nothing to do with justifying Jews doing the weird things. This is why the question that people always get stuck on, like, therefore, why are we still doing it? That's not a problem for this question. It's a problem for you, weirdo, that are still doing it. But it's not a problem for God, because God didn't make you do it. I mean, in some sense He did, but that's not what we're into. We're into the explanation of it. Exactly. And now, of course, this now becomes more touchy of how we say it. But therefore, and the Rambam understands, and of course this becomes a big problem, and that's why we don't know how to say it. But God means what the Torah was given. In other words, by Moshe Rabbeinu's times. Everything that happened afterwards is either literally what he said, okay, Perish HaMitzvahs, but most things and many things that Rambam explicitly says in Perek Mem Aleph, that Chacham are allowed to change things. And of course he knows that Chacham changed a lot of things. Maybe even some of the things that existed didn't change, but we don't have to go that far. Many of the things we do are human, really. They're important, but they're not, they're also divine actions, just one more chain. But anyways, but they're not like the God's actions that we have to explain here. So, and that's why he doesn't have to explain every takunas. Like there's takunas chachamim that says, don't do yibum. Okay, but that's not my problem. There's not such takana, just imagine. If there's a takana that says changes something in practice, something like that, well, probably it's a good thing, but it's only a good thing for its time. So it's not, and we remember that the Nitzchis Torah, or the real actions, the real science is only about the unchanging or less changing things. So the less something changes, the more true it is, or the more basic it is, or the more divine it is. And therefore, to understand the Torah is to understand what God gave us, not to understand what Jews do. What Jews do is a different discussion.
Right?
To make that into what God is, there's Ketzvinitis. That's what we say. But also to do the opposite is Ketzvinitis. So we have to. But the Kitzur, that's why in Modern Nevuchim, this is just a general thing. That's why in Modern Nevuchim he's obsessed with understanding the Torah, and that's why if he has an historical shot, unlike people say, "Oh, you're doing archaeology, I don't care." No, he's explaining God. His tag is not to explain yourself. If you want to explain why you're doing it, you have a different book to write. It's not this book. And actually, explicitly, many other books about Talmud mitzvahs are not about explaining the history. They're explaining about what to do. And we have this shirim of explaining why that history is not important. But in the Rambam sense, it's not history. It's God's actions that need to be explained. And he explains God being rational as acting within the constraints of human nature and so on. Now, Tachlis is that's why, and it looks like here in this shtickle, it seems like he says, Hapnei Sevatokim is a general midah tova. It's not really in other words, the pasuk. There's a mitzvah to be mechabed leimdei Torah v'yodei Torah, and that is a mitzvah. Where does it say that mitzvah? I don't know. It doesn't say the pasuk. But then there's also a mitzvah l'snag b'boishes vanova. You see, and boishes vanova is also a language from in Modern Nevuchim. There's even more words about this in Perek one of the Perekim of Agdamas. He talks about this. Do I remember which one? I don't remember. Anyways, there is a shtickle where he talks about one of the mataras Torah being that a person should have some kind of receptive attitudes.
That's what an is?
Yeah.
Intellectual honesty.
No, I think. Let me see. I can't find the shtickle that I'm thinking of. There's a piece that says like this. Let me see if I could find it. How come I'm not finding it? Yeah, here. Michlal perek lamed gimel. I'll read short. Michlal matoras hatoyin ha'adinus ha'adinut v'anochut labriot. V'shlo yodam mispatem v'gas. Don't be a grubbying. Ela nana. Yes, kedamidan answerable or answering. I don't know how you say it. The tzaisan, listener. I follow. Mitcharet v'shav v'noach labriot. And it says this is what which pasuk says this. Maltem is Allah savavchem v'arpchem leisak shoed. And the Rambam says this is not only like you think, just saying God, like I'm talking this all. No, be a certain soft person, receptive. That's why I think the word receptive is, of course, to the right people in the right ways. But in toivu shmatem v'shemanu v'estina mashchanu acharecha neritza. He brings all this psukim and he says this is miklal mataras haTorah. So this. Remember, the Rambam has.
It's like, is it like a meter that goes directly out of obtaining knowledge? Is that what it is?
I don't know if it's about obtaining knowledge. Maybe it is.
It
doesn't seem to me.
That's closest to that.
I haven't understood it as about obtaining knowledge. I've understood it as, in other words, it's a chana to obtaining knowledge. In other words, remember the Rambam has there's the general, in the most general sense, kamatar satayah, which is tikkun nefesh and tikkun aguf, and then in the chapters after that, he has a list of I don't know how many, 3 or 4 different things that are like michlal matar satayah, like not looking after your tavis, and for example. And being against Tavis, this Rambam, you make this into a cloud. Although, of course, that's not the goal. Not sure about like the Rambam. Like the Rambam. Why do we have to always, this is a very, I've been hacking with Smechavis every day. We keep on trying to interpret things according to categories that we already know. Listen to this person, he's speaking. He said like this. He thinks that there's a general thing. In other words, it explains many mitzvahs and many things. But it's a general thing, general purpose, of course not the end. It's not an end in itself. But there's a general thing, a general midah that Torah is very much into, which is to be less about tava, or how that's our language. To be loyli moshech achar achayma v'aguf, or whatever language like that. Lintosh is a tavas, to eat less. Okay, that's a matorah and the Torah. Now, why is it matorah? Of course, the reason for this is because the more you eat, the less you learn. In the sense of making it an end, not in the sense of eating for itself. And that's in that sense. And he says this is like the biggest drama. Like this is a musar or philosophical twist on everything, where it says like the biggest problem, the things that mostly makes people not understand things is food and sex. Those are the 2 problems in life. Everything else is ways of getting you to stop this. That's why so just eat less somehow, and so on, and masirabiyah and all of those things. And therefore we have all these mitzvahs that are about this, and there's even mitzvahs that are explicitly this. Because the Rambam has mitzvahs ben soyer and moira, and there's a Azorah of ben soyer and moira, and there's a Gemara about this, but the Rambam understands that there's a issa to be a fresa. It's not like the Rambam that thinks it's only Kaddish Asma. The Rambam says literally a lav to be a fresa. It's a very general lav, you can't really be over on it because nobody knows what's the sheer fressing, but there's such a issa. Azorah of ben soyer and moira. What?
Don't be gluttonous.
Yeah, something like that. And after that, and then he says, in the same parak, that there's another, and so this is one general thing, don't be glutton, like you say. And then there's another thing, which is be nice. I think that's the case. Be nice. Being niceness, he says, adinus v'neiches levrius. I don't know, it sounds like niceness. So something like nice.
Be a mensch.
Yeah, a mensch is very general. I mean, particularly, the middle of being nice, or being like, I say soft, or nana, I like the word nana. Like, answer. Yeah, receptive. Being receptive is part of the. I think that's what another Vashis means.
Core of obtaining knowledge.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know if that's.
Which you would say is, which would probably be the most important meter. That's what
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what is the goal of this. All these things are things that are very helpful for obtaining knowledge. I agree.
Mental flexibility is very important. Also willing to listen to other people's opinions.
Yeah, maybe just being a like being a man, like being a man yourself, listening to other people. Not being
narcissistic.
What they teach you at finishing school. Being a little more manners, having good manners, right? Yeah. How useful is having good manners? Is it useful for learning?
I don't think we live.
If it's fake, it's fake. But I'm talking. Maltem is alles lefafchem. Like, don't always be against everything.
I think it's a little.
Be sometimes pro things. Like sometimes just be receptive.
Do things because someone told you for once.
Exactly. Sometimes if someone tells you a good thing, listen. Exactly.
If it's not a bad thing, at least.
Right. Right. And it seems to me that that's what he means. I don't know. That's his interpretation of like the more closer to pshat of Pnei Seva Tokim. Maybe the halacha makes it mostly about listening to Chachmei Torah. But the pshat is, and he says, it doesn't say the pshat of respecting old people, because I don't think old people are so important. Not for the Ram, I think the Ram would respect just the old person. But midas hanova, right? Or it says boishes vanova, he said just midas hanova. Right? So like having this humility, which says, okay, you're an older person, or you don't take all of the seats on the bus.
I would say maybe generally maybe it's a Brigham Miller type of shot. An older person who fresses isn't going to make it very old. He's going to die because of beasts,
No, so.
And or whatever the STDs.
And?
So he's trying to say that if a guy made it for a very long time, especially for stomach.
Oh, he must be.
He must be someone that kept his.
That might be true.
He
I
does.
don't know.
He
I don't know what's got to do with Brigham Miller. This pshat. I don't know what it got to do with Brigham Miller. It's true.
I said this shot. I remember him saying that. The guy, this old guy, he didn't do drugs. He didn't do drugs. He wasn't smoking.
But the Ram agrees with.
Yeah, that's what I understand what he's saying.
Ram most rat comes from doing this type of thing. So guy maybe.
Yeah. No, but he's not. He's talking. But here he's thinking about the person, about the stander upper, not the one that's being standed up for. Right? Like I said, his tamim always go back to the individual, not to the. You shouldn't stand up for the person. You see. Then that's this like virtue ethics, right? You shouldn't give tzedakah because poor people need money. You should give tzedakah to train yourself to be a good person.
The way you do it that way.
No, altruism. Like, he didn't hold of it. This category doesn't make sense. There's no such thing as altruism and egoism. These categories are fake. They're not good ways of thinking about humanity.
They call them people.
No, he denies them as good moral category. He doesn't deny. He never heard of it. It was invented after him. Like I don't know. I don't remember who invented it, but it's a late invention in human thought. The concept of altruism and egoism. And it's the opposite. To the Rambam, it makes total sense to say, at least in these chapters, there's other places where he says other things, but in these chapters it always makes sense to say you should give tzedakah to someone, so you should be a good person. That's why you sometimes give tzedakah to people who don't deserve it, or sometimes do it in ways that are more helpful for your soul than for that person. Or sometimes, like you said, sometimes respect the Rebbe, even though he doesn't deserve all the respect. Maybe.
You should respect everybody. You're right.
And like you said, thanks for talking, we should respect everybody. Yeah, maybe that's why.
Although I would think if you would say that it's somewhat aligned, so it ends up aligned, right? There's not going to be that many scenarios. There shouldn't be too many scenarios, unless you live in a really messed up world, that helping poor people in a way that doesn't help anyone else but yourself. It should align, right?
It's not true when you see the smell.
Well, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. It's a little weird because like because it's somewhat circular. Like, in what sense are you becoming a better person when you're helping someone? You're becoming a better person by doing the right thing, which is to help someone, right?
Right.
So it's not really.
That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't really have too many ways.
It's not too many ways. I think the only sense it's really like goes back to the individual is because this is about your happiness or your ultimate things, which is not being a good person. The meaning of being a good person is to help other people. It's not to be good yourself. I mean, that's the meaning of a perfect person. But because we have more perfections and we say these will help you to those, and those are even more individual, because knowledge is not something that you could share really. Knowledge is always a secret. It's always esoteric. It's always belongs to a person in his mind or whatever. It's not like something between you and others. It's been a l'makam, and that's why. And when we say that everything has to end in that, then we turn all the other things like tzedakah and mishpat. We turn it to giving tzedakah into something like preparing you to meet God. But it doesn't mean that giving tzedakah is not about that person, because that is what the midah is. You don't have to go to you, like I say, that there's a convergence. That is what it is. The definition of being a good person is helping other people. But it does make a difference, and that's why it does make a difference. Like sometimes you would say something like, I told someone sometimes someone says, well, maybe you should cheat here and there, and it's a mutter because of this and that, which might be good arguments. If it would be only like a question of chesed mishpat, but since it's also a question of you becoming a liar, then it's not worth it. There's halacha like this. You shouldn't lie to Ibn Goy because you teach yourself to become a shakran and things like that. So it actually makes you a better person when you care about yourself. Anyways, that's the reasoning of Hilchos.
That's why I always try to cut people from traffic. It makes them
you could. What are you doing in traffic?
Cutting people off in traffic.
You should not do it.
No, I do it, so I make them better people.
How?
They learn patience and stuff.
You're making other people better. Yeah, but then you're making yourself better. You see, that's the problem. You have to care. You have to care. Yeah, you see, I know many people that I sometimes think. No, I get it. No, but it's actually funny because like if I know some people that I'm very mad at them for not getting mad ever, because they care more about their midas hakast than about what the other guy did to them or did to someone else. Like hello. I'm here bothering you. You should care. You should get mad. No, I don't care. I'm tzaddik. I never get mad. Excuse me. Why are you so selfish? This doesn't make any sense. But still a thought. Yeah, and meaning to say you have to, part of being a human is to have relations with others. You can't like say it's not really like it says here. Anyway, that's the main thing, and this is why Hilchos Talmud Tora is part of Sefer HaMada. Now, what did I want to tell you? Two more nikudas. What time is it? I have only 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
I have to say two more things. So there's 3 parts of Hilchos Talmud Tora, or really 4 parts, but we'll skip the 4th part. Okay, the first one is that it's a mitzvah to learn. And really, the mitzvah is a mitzvah to teach. There's no mitzvah to learn. Just not whatever. It's not really that way. But the teaching is primary. L'ilmad really. It's not l'ilmad l'lamad. It's l'lamad l'ilmad. Of course, in order to teach, you have to know. But like the siras ha-mitzvah is to learn to teach someone, and therefore there has to be someone that learns it. And that's why the first it always starts with. That's why the Torah l'mantam ezvanechem, right? How do you know? Of course, because you're there. That's why it's sort of a meta-mitzvah, because like how the first thing that came to Sinai were Makayim mitzvahs Talmud Torah, right? They said Birchas Torah in the morning. Before Mam Dasin, they said Birchas Torah. Well, no, because there's no mitzvah Talmud Torah, but it was mitzvah Talmud Torah. Anyway, that's why I said it's a meta-mitzvah. But that's why in like the Makar, it's always the limud is first, and then there's also a mitzvah for everyone to learn, and you have to learn 9 hours a day. No, that was just a silly example. Everyone thinks that the Rambam is saying that you should learn 9 hours a day. It's just taking a simplified example, and you should learn everything, and that's what I'm saying. And then there's the halacha takes chacham. You have to make a malam tamegis. That's perek beis, and that is the first mitzvah of learning everything. And what you have to learn is the whole Torah, everything that it says in the Mikra, and everything that it says in the Rambam. That's the main thing. Right? That is in
Is there more words?
the end of Perek Aleph. What? More words for?
What we should learn.
That's what it says. I'm not going to get into the details. Shlish b'terish b'ksav, shlish b'terish b'peh, v'shlish yovim v'yaskel, achiv dov mereshisa, v'yotze dov meduva, v'idama dov meduva, kitza. Including parvis. That's the important thing. That's the important thing. The important thing is that these are the 3 things. So you have to like sort of have three different shirim every day. One is the Torah B'Ksav. It's not clear to me why you have to learn Torah B'Ksav, by the way. Everything else I understand. I discussed this. I never answered the question.
We hyped ourselves up so much Torah B'Ksav. Like, what do you
I still don't know why we need Torah B'Ksav. I mean, only for like learning the Gemara. But if you learn all the psukim that are in the Rambam, I don't know why you need to read the rest of the psukim.
The Torah is awesome. It's the most interesting thing to learn.
I didn't say that. It's not interesting. I'm asking according to the Rambam why.
These are really well written.
These are all good things, but that's not. Anyways, I'm asking. We should know it. And the third thing is Talmud, and Talmud is like he says in the beginning, it's going to literally just be a third, and the end it's going to be most of your learning. And Talmud is a whole different thing. Now, that's the important thing. Now, Perek Gimel says a whole different new thing, and it talks about some yud, something called Keser Torah, and it says someone Mishin Esoy Liba. That's what one halachos starts. Mishin Esoy Liba lekayim mitzvah zikroi v'liyos smichta bekisra shel Torah. Okay, so now what this means is that there's 2 different things. I think it's obvious. Everyone knows this. There's 2 different halachos in Talmud Torah, but it's somewhat connected to this Mishnah and Talmud thing. In other words, there's a mitzvah. You want to be Yotz Talmud Torah, you could learn the whole Torah in your Yotz. But if you want to have Keser Torah, and that's the language that he gets from the Mishnah, and Keser Torah means to really be someone that knows things. And if you want to really be something that knows things, you have to. What do you have to do? Never stop learning. That's the answer. And this is where we get all the asceticism from. This is very similar to what we discussed earlier. Like same thing, like in the Pshat of the Torah. Pshat of Torah, you're allowed to fast as much as you want. Maybe not too much, but more or less. But if you want to be a philosopher, then you have to eat much less. Not because it's bad to eat, according to philosophy and not according to Pshat, but because it just takes away too much time and too much. Well, more than time, it takes away also time and also
changes. With philosophy, it'd be okay, like with the soil and cream pill, whatever. Like the pill, you know.
What kind of pill? If you can take it in a pill.
Take a pill and you don't have to eat it all the whole day.
Like the mun.
Oh, if you don't have to eat, if you should eat.
There's a sci-fi book about it where the guy eats. You know, they don't eat real food.
There's Soylent.
Soylent Green. That's what I said. I'm not sure you recognized it.
Oh, I didn't realize. Yeah, you can if you want it. Yeah, it seems like. I don't know if it's Geschmack alive. I don't know.
The mun is supposed to be, and that's why they couldn't handle it.
I don't know. Yeah, he should eat Oiland, and not only that, Rama literally thinks that this is why it says Lechem le'ochel ma'anashes. That's how much you're going to learn the Torah. He only did it for 40 days. Maybe it's enough. I don't know. You have to not eat, and basically not masich das ledvarim acherim. And that's why you should leave up everything, and you should also work somehow. But that's the next part. And don't ask me how these 2 things work together. Doesn't seem realistic. But anyways, and you have to learn all night and all day. And because that's another whole level. Because this is really being a knower. And that's like saying, it's not clear, like this is like, I don't know which mitzvah it is. It says, Mishnah Soy Liba. If you have this, like a drive.
He's getting at the ultimate goal of this thing.
Yes, and this one very clearly that this ultimate goal of Talmud Torah is the same, and it's literally the same language. If you look at today, in the end of Hilchos Talmud Tora, where he talks about the goal of knowing God, says the same, and he has this famous language of Shoigi Batumid, Eina Havas Hashem Nekeres, and so on. And this is the same thing. You don't learn Torah unless you always. This is like focus on always. I think that the focus on always is mostly because humans live too short. I think if it would be sci-fi where we could live 10,000 years, then we would be able to do everything. But sadly, we only live like whatever amount of years there is. We only have like 40 really active years.
That's why I'm Mr. Eclipse, so it's to go.
Wow. You have to live for another 50 years until it comes back.
Not 45, I'll be
whatever.
already.
Okay. But the sad thing, I think that this is the real reason. I don't know if there's that's why, I think that's the reason. Because we live too short and therefore we don't have time. And it takes really a lot of time to understand anything. Yeah. People don't realize how rare it is understanding. Like, all the people are like, wow, Chazal didn't know some basic thing. Well, you know why they didn't know it? Because it takes 1,000 years of learning to know this. And there's like one person in 1,000 years that has the talent or the zitzflash or the concentration to figure these kinds of things out. Or like a big not everything can be done. Some things can be done by accumulation and some things can't. Some things literally need some crazy guy, not crazy, exceptional person to do things like that. And it's very, 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 very rare. It's also rare in Torah. Like for some reason, everyone is jealous of the Rambam, nobody managed to even like copy him. And like information Torah, right, and so on. It's really, really rare, and we're like sometimes we're impressed. Like the Rambam claims that Moshe Rabbeinu was singular, and like why shouldn't it be more? Well, something. Try. It's very hard, very hard. Maybe I don't know. It's very, very hard. And like once in history, things are the norm in truth, not an exception. Once in history from the beginning of evolution. I don't know, in the last 10,000 years, recorded history. Yeah, and Newton only knew two things. For all of his effort, he only found out two things. They're very good, amazing. Those three things, they're amazing things. Okay, a little more, I'm not saying. But basically, they're amazing things, but they're not everything. And he made a lot of basic mistakes also. And also, it takes someone like that. And he has to be rich, and he has to have like the money to go on his retreat over there and wherever and where he did his work. And there has to be some reason for him to not have to go home. But gets it. And this is very rare. And that's why these extreme drives are like, go do nothing else. That's like the minimum. Doesn't even help. And I said, if we would be infinite, if we would live for very long, maybe we wouldn't have this problem. But sadly, we die. And so that's the second thing. And the third thing then is Hilchos Kvod Chachamim, and that's what we discussed. That's more important than there's even like Hilchos Nidhi and Cherem, like Manad Mal Kvod Arav and so on. But that's all like mostly about the respect that is needed for. That's actually not only for. That's why I said there's two kinds of respect. There's one that we have to respect your teacher in order to learn from him. And there's another one where the society has to respect the learners, people, in order to learn from them in some more broad way. And most of it is about the second one. Although, that's what I said, there's more things that seem to belong to this, which is things like, well, number one, like we discussed, there's Hilchos Deis, again, that second level person from Perek Gimel has to, just like he has to learn more, he also has to act in certain exceptional ways. And some of them are precious, right? Like, why not? Just because it takes away time from learning. Not because it's, and there's other things, like you have to pay right away, because people will say, all kind of things like that.
And respect too, as well, yeah.
Because of you having respect, you can't eat too much, you're not allowed to enjoy life too much, because people will not respect you for some reason. Because people are weird, bad that way. They want their teachers to suffer. Anyways, and so that has to do with that. And so that's something. And there's the other thing, which, like I said, he puts like one halacha to be mischabed kvod chachamim. There's many. What about kibbud avayim? You could have put in the same thing. And kibbud avayim is in the weirdest place in the Rambam. It's in Sefer Shoftim and Hilchos Mamrim. And you could put many halachas of Sefer Shoftim, which is sort of the authority of the chachamim. But that's more like of the formal authority, maybe, or legal authority. And this is more of like the internal authority, where it's almost like a mitzvah shabbadah. You have to stand up and do all these things, but. Anyways, that's basically what Hilchos Talmud Tora is for. So it's basically for knowing everything. In order to know everything, you have to have there's two levels, like knowing and knowing. And you have to have teachers, and you have to learn from teachers, and you have to respect them. That's the end. Okay. Yeah.